Roll for intro.
Yep.
3.
4. Hello, everyone. I am Nolan McCausey,
And I'm Colton Wesley.
and we are adults. Cue intro music. Boom.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I'm working on intro music. I will say this publicly on the air. I am working on it as we, not as we speak. I'm not sitting at a piano, but in process of creating intro music for us, just to make it a little bit more official. It won't sound anything like that. Thankfully, because that was actually really bad. But it worked for today.
So the unofficial intro music for We Are Adults has officially seen airtime. But yeah, we're getting an official theme at some point. Nolan's working on it.
Yep.
So in the meantime, quick housekeeping note. We have a website, weareadultspodcast.com. It hadn't gone live before the first 2 episodes were done. So although the website was done before they went, I should say before the episodes were recorded, we didn't have a website. Now we have a website.
Look it up.
weareadultspodcast.com. You can still email us at weareadultspodcast@gmail.com.
And you can be a part of our millions of fans.
Yes, you can. You can join this, whatever you call a group of fans.
A plethora of people.
Sure. We'll go with it, a plethora. So join the plethora.
Hashtag.
Hashtag join the plethora. That, I don't know, that doesn't sound, that doesn't sound like exactly much like a rallying cry.
Yeah.
Doesn't have that French Revolution vibe to it.
No.
But anyway, weareadultspodcast.com. Also, we're on Facebook at We Are Adults Podcast. We're on Twitter at We Are Adults Pod. So check out those pages, like us, and follow us, whatever.
And many thanks to Colton, because I've done literally none of that. So,
I mean, this, like,
kudos to you, sir. Kudos. I tip my hat, which I'm not wearing, to you.
making web pages is my job, so I'm pretty used to it. It's not exactly a ton of effort. It's more just making sure that we have things out there, because that's how publicity works.
False modesty.
Anyway,
False modesty.
Moving on. So yeah, weareadultspodcast.com, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. We're all over the internet now.
iTunes, right?
And iTunes, yes. Probably the biggest news, which we probably should make mention of, is we're on iTunes.
Yay!
Which you probably know because you're most likely listening to this on iTunes already. But if you don't, then yeah, we're on iTunes. Or Apple Podcasts, as they like to style themselves now. So if you want to check that out, you can do so. iTunes.com, and there's a link. There'll be a link on our website on our page for this show, where you can get the podcast. You can download it. You can get it from iTunes. You can get it on YouTube.
A URL link, not like Legend of Zelda link. It's a very different thing.
Yeah. We don't have like a little link figure walking around our website directing people. That would be super awesome.
We would get so hit for copyright infringement, but that would be legit.
It would be super cool. You click on the link.
Oh my gosh. We need to look into that somehow.
That would be pretty awesome. So, a couple of non-podcast related news notes from the last little while since we recorded. And we'll start with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that happened since then, hasn't it?
Yes, it did. We tried to record episode 3 at one point, and it didn't go well.
It was in the middle of a Pathfinder. Well, okay. Right before a Pathfinder game, and people started walking in and shouting things out as if they were their characters. Something about dwarves.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
Meat and dwarves.
Like
I still have that recording. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it. Also, we had a topic, but we didn't really have it like parsed down to something that we could manage in a single podcast. Which is, we'll get to that in a sec. To that in a second. But in the meantime, Nolan news.
Well, breaking news at 11. Nolan McCausey has officially become engaged.
Yes,
indeed.
Nolan is engaged. Congratulations, Nolan.
Oh, thanks, man. And Colton also has wonderful news.
Well, hold on. Before we jump into that, like, you're engaged, Nolan.
I know. I'm telling your wonderful news that you get to stand in my wedding.
Okay. That's pretty legit. Yeah, I do get to stand in his wedding, which I'm kind of excited for because I've never actually stood in a wedding. So it's going to be interesting. But Nolan, engaged to a wonderful person. Katie is awesome.
I'm glad you approve.
I definitely approve of Katie. She's really great.
Yep. I think so.
I hope so. So Nolan and Katie getting married. It's super cool, and I'm super happy for them.
Oh, thanks,
I
man.
think they're gonna be really great.
Soup's cute.
Sure, we'll go with it. So yeah, you guys are getting married in a couple of months.
Yep. Month and a half now.
Yikes.
I know, it's coming up quick.
Ugh. August, man. August.
Yep.
So yeah, Nolan and Katie getting married. That's exciting, and super happy for them. This does not mean that the podcast stops.
No, that would be dumb. That'd be like
that would be really
3 episodes.
Dumb.
And
I know. We'd like, hey guys, we just finished our 5th episode. We're finally getting into the groove, and now we're done.
No, it just means we have to have her on the show at some point.
Done and done. That actually sounds awesome.
Done and doneer.
So yeah, so that's what's going on with Nolan. And then on my end of things, I just accepted a graduate assistantship for grad school.
Yeah.
I'm going to work in sports information while getting my master's in English. Very excited about that.
Fancy.
So I'm moving out of state for that. Again, podcast is going to keep going. We're going to record the next few episodes as quickly as possible so that we can kind of settle into new lives during the month of August and early September.
Yep.
But mid-September, we're going to pick up with more shows, more recording again. So the goal, we've kind of settled into this, every 2 weeks, every other Monday is when the new show will come out. So this show,
fingers crossed.
This show is currently scheduled to be released July 17th,
2022.
No, this year, Nolan.
Oh.
We're not going to make them wait 5 years for the next show because no one would wait that long.
Why? It'd be like The Incredibles 2, which still isn't out yet.
I was going to say, they made one?
I think they're working on it.
You know, I've been waiting for Space Jam 2 for like a decade.
I know. I just watched that the other day. Dude, it was like a blast from the past. And there's so much humor in it that, like, as a 6-year-old, you're like, what? That's dumb. I just want to see the cartoons again.
I know, right?
Now as an adult, you're like, that's kind of clever and it's still pretty dumb, but...
That's one of the things about Space Jam is that the parents didn't hate it. I mean, they probably did to some extent, but, like, you couldn't really hate Space Jam that much.
No.
As an adult. You just can't. It's too good. And as far as, like, American cartoons go, the Looney Tunes, they're better than most.
It's true.
They're pretty much the best. So...
Classic.
They're not they get old after a while, but it takes a while.
Yep.
So,
and this segues into our topic for today pretty well.
Yeah, wow. I actually didn't realize that we were segueing into our topic, but apparently we are. Because you're right, it does segue into our topic. So this is a topic, again, we tried to cover this in our first go at episode 3, and it just wasn't working. In part because we didn't parse this down. We want to talk about entertainment, and that's a very big concept.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to break it up a little bit. So today we're going to talk about like being an entertainer and some of the things that come with that, both in our experiences and in the experiences of other people who entertain.
Welcome to Podcast Philosophy 101.
Sort of. We get existential from time to time around here. It's pretty great. So, and then from there, the next few episodes after that, we're going to talk about different kinds of entertainment, the ways that we are entertained, and what makes them special. So, like next week, we're talking about next week. I keep saying next week.
Let it be a surprise for
Okay.
them.
All right. I'll let it be a surprise. We'll be talking about a form of entertainment that we care very deeply about, that we've engaged with.
Gladiator fights.
Yep, gladiator fights. And we're going to have a real life gladiator.
That's how we're going to choose who opens our next podcast. Colton and I are going to go at it in a bloody duel, and whoever wins is the one who gets to introduce our podcast.
And the other person will not be on the podcast because they will be dead.
Presumably.
You know, when you say it out loud, it sounds like a terrible idea, Nolan. We'll talk about it.
We'll
We'll work it out.
Yeah.
So maybe, you know what we should do? We should do what medieval knights used to do.
Which was what?
The thing where they get on horses, jousting.
Jousting.
They get on horses and they ride toward each other with these like 400-pound lances, and they just try to knock each other off a horse.
Okay.
That sounds significantly less deadly, although no less painful.
Not now, but we need modern tools, so maybe we could do it with bikes and selfie sticks.
Oh my gosh! Can
I mean,
we do
you have
this?
you have a long straight driveway, road.
Can we do this?
I don't think we need a permit or anything.
I think that we just figured out how at some point we're going to figure out how we open the podcast by jousting with bicycles and selfie sticks. I like this. I like this idea quite a bit. If you have ideas for how we should decide who opens the podcast,
Yes,
by the way,
yes,
like
please.
we're quickly running out of ideas.
It's not episode 3.
It's episode 3. We're already kind of running out of ideas. So like at some point, like we're talking about like thumb wars and, you know, maybe tic-tac-toe or something. I don't know.
That's a good one.
To try to decide who opens the show. So if you have ideas, please email us. weareadultspodcast@gmail.com if you want to throw out some ideas for how we can decide who should open an individual podcast. Yep. So please do that. But yeah, at some point we're gonna be jousting. That's a great idea.
Writing it down.
All right, good. So let's jump into this idea of entertainment. Entertainment as entertainers.
Mm-hmm.
So most of entertainment is done by yourself. Like, if you are entertaining someone, you usually aren't in front of a group of people doing live entertainment. I mean, you can.
Right.
But the majority of it is done by yourself in front of a laptop or in front of some kind of recording device. You're creating something that someone else will watch at a later date or read or whatever. And even if you are a public performer, you know, if you're an athlete or if you're a comedian or if you're a musician and, you know, you do perform in front of people, you're spending hours upon hours, you know, in a studio or just in your room practicing, playing, rehearsing.
It's a lifestyle.
So most of entertainment is done behind closed doors, which is interesting because it's an inherently public thing.
Right. Right.
I don't know. Let's start from there. Like, in your experience, Nolan, you're being a musician. What does that look like for you, that the prep versus the actual going out and performing in front of people?
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of entertainment is that it has to have an element of novelty to it. I mean, to some extent, if you're speaking specifically about entertaining other people, then it involves that level of skill. I mean, you know, someone sitting down at a piano, having never played it before, trying to entertain people, like, it could be entertaining, I suppose, but it would be more of a comedic act than an actual I'm going to play piano act. So I mean, behind entertaining, there's a lot of practice, a lot of personal drive and effort that really, usually isn't all that entertaining. It oftentimes isn't entertaining. Beating your head against a wall or doing the same drill over and over and over and over again. Just so you can get that bit better to make yourself a better entertainer. There's also, though, I don't know that it's just I know it's not just I do this just to entertain people. There's also, as a musician anyway, I don't know if it's the case with every form of entertainment, but as a musician, like, there's so much of it that involves me doing it for myself. Me doing it because it's a part of who I am. And even if I know that I'm working on a piece that no one will ever really listen to, I'm still doing it because it brings me fulfillment and a level of joy in being the person that I was created to be. Although there is that element of wanting it to be seen and wanting it to be experienced by others, because without that, it can still be fulfilling, but it lacks the fullest aspect of what it can be.
And I think that speaks to something that's kind of inherent in being someone who does entertain people, is that we do it because ultimately we want to. Like we started doing this for ourselves. We made music because we liked the music. We started writing because we had characters we wanted to talk about. We had stories we wanted to tell. So I think that during that creative process, I think and then there are days when the creative process just is not fun.
Oh, many days. So many days.
But remembering that you got into this because it's something you enjoy, this field of entertaining people or whatever it is that is. Like you got into that because you loved the art itself. Because ultimately, entertainment comes down to performance of art for the sake of other people.
Yeah.
In one form or another. And that's also something that extends to other things like video games. The people who create video games usually are people who care about video games themselves. They got into the industry because they loved the characters and the stories of the games that they played at some point in their lives and continue to play.
Yeah.
So they decided they wanted to do that for other people.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, I mean, to be a good creator, or a good entertainer, rather, you need to be someone who enjoys it in the first place.
Yeah. You can tell when people love what they're doing. There's an extra quality there. And I'm not saying that most people get into it because they care about it. But when people when people still care about it after they've been doing it for a long time,
yeah,
you can tell. You can tell when it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
And I think that the majority of people who create entertaining work do it as successfully as they do it, in part because they enjoy what they do. Not to say that everyone who enjoys what they do is good at it, but
right,
it helps. And that's what makes it so difficult when you're finished with whatever your thing is, and now you have to release it to a waiting public. That is not easy for a couple of reasons. Yep. One, you can't fix it anymore. Which is why when something is done, I don't like to go back and read it, because
you'll see what's wrong with it.
You will see so many things wrong with it. That's why asking for feedback on something that's been published, like for me it's being published because I'm a writer. So when something has been written, especially something that I've been pouring my heart and soul into, something that I feel very confident and passionate about, you hate asking people for opinions at that point. During the creative process, if you're showing someone a draft and they like it, don't like it, whatever, that's one thing.
It's helpful.
But once it's out there and you can't really do a whole lot to fix it, like there's some things you can do. Sometimes you can make edits to some extent. But once it's out there, like it's out there. People read it, they take it for what it is, not for what you wanted it to be.
Right.
That's when it gets tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's like sending your little child out into the world. And
in a way.
They're all alone and
in a way, and
being judged by others.
And not only are they going to be judged. So here's the thing, like being judged is one thing, because that that implies like, okay, this is a reflection of you. What gets really interesting is when people take your work, and this isn't something that happens to me very much, but it's something that I do to other people's work, is I appropriate people's work into my life. Like I have, for me, like there'll be songs that are connected with certain people, or, with certain other things, certain other pieces, but in certain other artistic pieces, that is, they go together, or, they're a reference, for me, something might refer to something specific for me,
right?
That the writer or the author or the singer, they don't know.
It takes on personal significance.
Exactly. And that's when it, for me, it doesn't happen a whole lot because I'm mostly a writer, so most of what I write is relatively concrete. But for someone like you, like your You did a piece for a class that we were in. We were in a class where we read a bunch of C.S. Lewis.
So good.
Great class.
Such a good class.
And for your final project, you actually composed a piece relating to the calling out of the stars at the end of The Magician's Nephew, the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Chronicles of Narnia, that is.
Yeah.
And that piece, like obviously it has a context because it's referring to something specific in a specific piece of literature, but that piece means something different for me than it does for you, because for me, it connects to so many things. It connects to the class, it connects to the people in the class, but it also connects to my understanding of C.S. Lewis and that book, which is unique to me because I don't read that book the same way anyone else reads it. So when you start making these connections between art and you, that is when something that is, you know, on its surface, just an abstract kind of a set of notes on a piece of paper or a video game or, you know, a book, like those things attach themselves into your life and they become a part of you. As a consumer of entertainment, that's normal. As a creator of entertainment, that's weird to think about. Is someone else appropriating your work, attaching it to their life, and attaching some kind of significance that you can't understand because you don't know the context of their life.
Right. And I think too that's where you get into another aspect. This is kind of a side note, I guess, but another aspect of entertainment is when it really transcends merely entertaining, because some entertainment is meant purely for that. Sometimes you sit down and watch a TV show or sit down and play an hour video game just to unwind, literally just for that purpose of, I need to chill, I need to just be entertained, I need to just relax for a little bit. But then there are those things that are entertaining, but they transcend mere entertainment. They truly become art because they impact the consumer in a specific way, whether it be an individual or a large group of people. Like, you know, for me, one instance would be The Wind Rises, a movie. It's a Studio Ghibli film, so it's an animated film. And honestly, it's my favorite film of all time, not just animated, but in general. Just because, even though it's a form of entertainment, you're watching a movie, but it really, the artists who created this form of entertainment, this movie, they poured thought and intention and a worldview and different ideas into this film and make you ask questions. And that, I think I can honestly say that specific film has, in some large ways, shaped the way I view the world. And that's just a piece of entertainment that, for me, has taken on a huge amount of significance.
And that's where we reach this, you know, what is the relationship between art and entertainment? We would say, I think we can say we can be entertained by things that aren't art, but defining art is that's a thing. Right.
You could have a whole podcast like just for that purpose.
You could have and not just an episode, like a whole podcast.
A whole podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, you could devote and people have devoted hours and hours and thousands upon thousands of pages to trying to figure out what art is and what it isn't. But even if you define art extremely broadly, entertainment and art are clearly connected. Maybe to some extent, entertainment is it's an expression of beauty, in a way, and it's a way to connect human beings through their shared appreciation of what is beautiful. And like, that sounds a little bit weird, I guess, but a funny joke is a beautiful thing. You know, a well-animated battle sequence in a video game is a beautiful thing. You know, a nat 20 is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Like, there are, like, there, and like, I mean...
And cheers go around the room.
Oh, yeah. But and it's not really, and obviously it's not like the die roll or the die itself that it's the beautiful thing, but the beautiful thing is what it means. It's, the story that's being created. It's the camaraderie that's being experienced because of that role. And entertainment at the end of the day, it is, we gather, and sometimes we, even just on our own, we appreciate what is beautiful because we like to experience beautiful things. It's part of our nature. We're drawn to things that are excellent, things that are above and beyond, which is why when we talk about film, we talk about it looked really good, it didn't look really good, the story was really good, story was terrible,
dialogue was horrible.
We talk about these things because though films are and there's kind of a universal, it seems to be a fairly universal constant with this idea that entertainment is inherently beautiful. Episode 1, Nolan and I were talking about Pacific Rim. And we disagree very vehemently, but that's because we have differing ideas of what is beautiful in film.
Uh-huh.
And that's why we disagreed on that. And things that reach that point of universal acceptance as beautiful are the things that become popular.
Yeah.
And there are lots of art critics, and there are lots of people who are way smarter than we are, who have a lot of opinions on art, and who may or may not find the latest album by so and so to be an artistic expression.
Which again, looping back to, I'm sorry, I interrupted your train of thought. Or flipping back to what we were saying is where the terrifying part of putting your entertainment, your art out there comes in, because who knows if it'll be popular.
Right. And, I thought I created a beautiful thing. I worked hard on this thing. This is my attempt at contributing to a beautiful world, and to a place where there are many beautiful things. If you don't see the beauty in it, my work has gone for naught. My effort is futile to some extent. It's not going to be completely futile just because of, what you learned through trying to create something. And also, if you created something that you like, to some extent, you succeeded. But it's interesting thinking about, so if you look at the things that, and, this all sounds really good until you look at, the Billboard charts, and you think to yourself, why is that at the top? But at the end of the day, it's at the top because enough people found it worthwhile for whatever reason. It's something they connect with. It's something they understand. Even if it's something that, and I just use that example because it's an easy example to pick on, because everyone knows a pop song that they hate. You're probably thinking of it right now, that pop song, and it's probably stuck in your head.
Oh, I hate you.
Sorry.
I hate you so much.
The great thing about this is that everyone has a different idea, and this fits right into the concept. Everyone has a different idea of what those things are that are and are not beautiful. So the song I have in my head is not the song you have in your head, very likely.
I'm curious. What song do you have in your head?
I have "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift in my head right now.
Well, I've got "Baby, Baby, Baby Oh" by Justin Bieber. So
I agree with you on that one. Ow. Anyway, but yeah, so but enough people find those things beautiful and entertaining thereby. And the reason that they do, frankly, doesn't have anything to do with me. And that's why, and now we're talking about the relativity of art, I guess, because everyone's going to think that different things are beautiful, and that's okay. But when when a lot of people find things beautiful is when they become popular. And at least to me, am I totally off base making this connection between entertainment and art and beauty, or am I on the right track? Because it's mostly been me rambling for the past 10 minutes.
Hey, I mean, that's okay. Sometimes you've just got to ramble, man. I understand. I'm with you. And you're speaking with your passionate voice, so I wasn't going to stop you. My question, I guess I would pose to you. Okay, so here's question time. Question time with Nolan McCausey. So if you think about art and entertainment, in the sense of like a graph. So the idea of the two circles. Would you put like, I don't know, are they called Venn diagrams?
Yes.
I remembered something from elementary school. So Venn diagram time.
Math and things.
Would you put like art and entertainment as two of the circles, and they sometimes overlap in the middle, with the idea that not all entertainment is art. Sometimes it's just fun and frivolous, and that's okay. Not all art is entertainment. Sometimes it's a painting is meant to encourage us to reflect rather than to be entertained. And then sometimes they meet in the middle. Or do you think it's more of entertainment being a circle within the circle of art? The idea that not all art is entertaining, but all entertainment involves art in some form or another.
I think I'm leaning toward the latter, mostly because like I'm trying to think of a form of entertainment that doesn't involve some kind of artistic expression. Like even something that is seen as frivolous, like a good joke is a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that means like even something that's silly or dumb, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like that's just, it's stupid. But it's fantastic.
But it has an art of humor to it. That's
But that kind of humor is still an art form. And art that isn't very good, like at the end of the day, something is entertainment if it's entertaining.
right.
And if it entertains a single person, it becomes entertainment.
Right.
So I'm not sure if there's a form of entertainment that doesn't have some kind of artistic element to it, I guess.
I mean,
I'm just trying to think of a counterexample and I'm struggling.
what would you say for sports?
Well, sports...
Get into your ballpark.
All right. Well, I think that sport is definitely... I mean, it's an entertainment industry.
Yes.
I'm not going to... And there are a lot of people who don't, especially sports fans, who don't like to think of it as an entertainment industry. It's an entertainment industry. At the end of the day, we watch sports because it's fun, not because it's important or because it has any bearing on anything. It's like watching a movie, just watching it, with a bunch... It's live and unscripted.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of following the same rules just to keep the plot kind of going in the right direction.
Right.
And there's a clock to make sure that, and some stories are better than others. Like,
and then there are dudes in black and white striped uniforms that make sure everyone is nice to each other.
They are the directors in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of. Some people would say that that they do too much directing. But in I think in sport there's, and I think that it's definitely entertainment, and I think it's also an art form. I think, and again, this is where defining art is so hard.
Yeah, right.
But I think that to say that sport isn't an art form is to do a disservice to all these people that are, and art obviously isn't just a matter of labor. Like there are lots of things that aren't art that are laborious.
Right.
But I think that the intentionality and the design and the symmetry of sport, it has so many. Like if you look at a play diagram in football, like who's to say that isn't artistic? Like you have many kinetic pieces in moving in a certain time and place and fashion to produce a desired result. But then on the other side of things, you have another diagram that's drawn up to do something to prevent the first diagram from working.
Right.
I mean, you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that, like, I don't know if you've seen it. Odell Beckham Jr. He's a receiver for the New York Giants. Made an insane catch a couple of years ago. Probably the greatest catch anyone has ever made in a football game ever.
Really?
I would say. We'll link it in the show notes for those of you who aren't familiar.
Yeah.
He caught it like falling backwards with like two fingers and one hand. It's nuts. It's a crazy catch. I don't know how he caught it, but he did. I think that there's something artistic in that. I think that there's a beauty in that motion, in that moment. And again, like it comes down to defining art. You're at a point where how do you define it? And I think that if you define art as broadly as I would, I think that falls in that.
Right. Yeah. Another thing, like if you think about specifically the sports example, like there also are other artistic elements. Like if you think about logos, if you think about team colors, if you think about all of those aspects, there's other artistic aspects that are involved within it.
That's funny because not that long ago I actually wrote an article.
Oh yeah.
That I actually took all the NFL team logos and talked about them aesthetically.
And people hate your guts now.
Oh my gosh, there was so much hatred in the comments. If you want to, I'll put the link in the show notes. If you guys want to click on that, because one, that I get paid, and two, if you want to leave a nice comment to kind of battle the vitriol, because there are some really angry people. Like you say something about a team logo, man, people lose their minds, and that's actually a really interesting point, because the fact that we have this kind of vitriolic disagreement over something as ridiculous as a sports logo, I don't know. I think that lends credence to the idea that this is artistic. I don't know.
Yeah. And you are the creator who put up your artistic, entertaining creation, and they shot you so full of holes.
They didn't shoot me full of holes, because my article is good, and I'm right. My opinions are correct.
Oh man.
And then if you don't mind, I'd like to stay on this idea of sport just for a minute, because I think sport is a really good example of another element of entertainment that seems to be consistent, and that is this idea of narrative.
Which you were talking about just a minute ago. Sort of
Mm-hmm.
with plot and
This idea that, like, in sport, you have protagonists, you have antagonists, and obviously who the protagonist and the antagonist depends on pretty much where you live. But you have people who are trying to accomplish a task, people who are trying to stop them from accomplishing the task.
like blow up the Death Star.
Yeah, exactly. Your team is the Rebel Alliance, and the other team is the Empire. That's how it works. But that's how we frame it in our minds. Like, not to that extreme most of the time. At least we shouldn't frame it to that extreme. But we do have this, there are protagonists, there are antagonists, there are obstacles, there are plot twists. There's games have ebbs and flows, and any person who is familiar with sport will talk about, when the other team starts to play well and they get on a run, you need to find a way to break it. You need to find a way to withstand it. It's just like in any story where, things are starting to go poorly for the protagonist. They've got to find a way to tough it out. They've got to find an answer. And that's how it is in sport as well. The only thing with sport is, the outcome isn't determined before the game. And at least we hope not.
Right.
And I think that that's a quality that exists in almost every form of entertainment to some extent. Books, movies, TV, music, sport, games, video games, role-playing games. All of those things, they have that narrative quality to them to some extent or another. Like, not all of them, all the time, I should say. Like, not every song has a story. But to some extent, they kind of do. There are narrative elements involved. There's a progression from point A to point B for a character, and sometimes that character is unspecified. Sometimes that character is, just it's unnamed, maybe, or it's just a concept getting from point A to point B.
Right.
But
I mean, even though in the song format, like a lot of songs, especially modern pop songs, like they do follow a narrative progression of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've got, your choruses, your bridges, your verses
Yeah.
that follow a sort of semi-standard pattern. Unless you're like a jazz quartet, in which case you just do whatever the heck you want. But
Right.
like even in that, like there's still that narrative quality of weaving melodies and weaving chord progressions into a form that makes sense and that moves forward. I mean, a lot of music theory, especially, is dealing with your chord choice and your choice of instrumentation and your choice of voicings that will push forward the kind of that impulse that moves you forward in the music. And it's about putting the right the right pieces together to either help that drive forward continue or to pull it back and leave a state of like hanging or a lack of motion. So there is even kind of a narrative quality in that can be seen. Sorry, I just nerd ranted on music.
No, go for it. Your music is your field, so please do.
I thought my field was corn.
He's outstanding in his field right now. I can see him.
Yep.
He's out there.
Like a scarecrow. Caw-caw, caw-caw.
That actually reminds me, for reasons that I'm not going to get into, of another thing that I wanted to bring up, and that we had talking about this in this episode, and that is the relationship between. So we talked about the relationship between the entertainer and their work, the relationship between the work and the entertained, and some of the qualities of the work. I want to talk for a minute about the relationship between the entertainer and the entertained, because we've talked about it like in the context of the work as like their shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
But now, so let's talk about the relationship between the actual person who's doing the entertaining and those who are being entertained.
Okay.
There is a huge. This is something that it's especially evident in journalism now. In kind of a this does come back, I promise. This idea that in order to sell papers, in order to get clicks, you need to tell stories that people are interested in, not necessarily the important stories they need to hear, but things about puppies.
Yeah.
And because everyone will click on stories about funny or interesting or strange things that maybe aren't particularly important but are interesting.
Yep.
And
I mean, I just had a YouTube video up called 6 Tricks You Can Do with a Balloon. So I mean,
yeah,
but sounded interesting.
But we do that, like we're drawn to those things, and that's not wrong. Like I'm not saying that we're wrong to create content about those things. I'm not. Hey, we got how far into this? We're like 44 minutes into recording. I think that's the first time we used the word content.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Not bad. Not bad for the internet age. Anyway, but so there's this what's the word?
I don't know.
What's the word?
Blacklight.
No, it's
corn cob.
It's two things that are being held in opposition to one another.
Kaleidoscope.
No.
Opposition.
It's similar to opposition.
Where one thing wants to fight the other thing.
In opposition, they're like pulling in
opposed
opposite direction, directly opposed. Okay, but it's a noun. There is this, but it's not opposition. There's this. It's like a dichotomy.
I'm working on it. Go. Synonyms.
It's like a dichotomy.
A contrast. A contradiction. A separation. A gulf. Not the sport.
No. We're gonna edit out like this last minute while we figure this out. Doggone it.
I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. It's entertaining. Ha! See how I did that?
Internet art content.
Boom.
All right. So whatever. So there's this. Anyway, where was I going with this?
You were looking for a word.
Yeah. There's this. So there's this dichotomy. There's this this direct opposition. I'm gonna when I'm editing this, I'm gonna think of the word, and I'm gonna be like, doggone it!
And you're gonna insert it, but you're gonna insert it with like a dichotomy, and that's gonna be your voice, and it's just gonna be like a pause in the recording, and it's gonna say that word, and then it's just gonna continue like nothing weird happened.
I am going to think about. I'm gonna seriously consider doing that. We'll see. Anyway, so there's this. So they're in. So these two ideas that are kind of in conflict of what is going to be popular because people will like it, and what is, what is good content. What is what are things that need to be created, and like that's like those ideas are in direct competition in journalism right now. Because frankly, print journalism is an industry that's hurting quite a bit. So for in that field, it's a question of necessity. Like, we need to answer this question in a way that's going to keep us afloat.
Right.
But so to some extent, when we're creating something, we want to create something that's worthwhile, but something that's also going to be good. But I think even more importantly, and that's what's really funny about this whole thing, is that I just spent like 7 minutes on that example when I'm really trying to get to this. I might just cut out that whole example because it's not even that good of an example. Is ultimately, Bo Burnham, a comedian that I really like, did a piece on. He did a song about the relationship that he has with his audience, and in that song, he talks about how he wants to please his audience, but he wants to stay true to himself. And he wants to say what he thinks and not care what his audience thinks, but he has to care what his audience thinks because his audience is his audience. It's the thing that, because you're not an entertainer unless you're entertaining somebody.
Right.
So you need to keep your audience, but you don't just want to keep your audience by, but you want to keep your audience because they like what you make, not because they like what you want to make, not just because you make things that they like.
Right.
And that's interesting. That piece about logos that I wrote, that got thousands and thousands of readers, like tons of clicks on that story. It's not an important piece at all. It's just analyzing logos. It's not important.
Yeah.
But I've written other pieces that I think are important, that have something important to say, and they don't get traffic.
Right.
And like, I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm just kind of rambling to some extent here, but there is this idea that, like, I want to create things that people like, but I want people to like the things that I want to create. I don't know. What do you think? How do you deal with that in your field?
I mean, it is tough. Like, I can say for me personally, like back when I was first going into college, like and it sort of relates to this, I was very like intentional. I want to be a composer. That's what I wanted to do. Musically, I wanted to compose. And got into it a little bit and started doing it, and just quickly realized that as an artist, like, I'm a very slow composer. Like, as making a form of entertainment, not only that entertains me, but entertains other people, like, I am very slow at it and very methodical. And when I compose at the pace I want to compose at, I won't finish a piece for years. Usually years. But if I were to be a composer, like, if that's what I were to do full time, like composing for film scores or something like that, I would literally have to be composing all the time. And I would have to be creating things that aren't really in me. They aren't a part of who I am and a part of my heart. I would kind of, to some extent, and this is just for me personally, I would have had to mass produce it, kind of create things on the fly. And although, I mean, it would have been a profession, and it would have, paid the bills and such, and it would have been entertaining, hopefully, I think, to people, it still would have lacked something for me. I'm sure I still would have had those pieces, I'm sure, that really would have been from my heart and really would have meant something. But I don't know. Looking back, I feel like if I had gone that route, there would have been a lot of pieces in between that would have been less than, because, you have to make a living in today's day and age, I guess, in just about any day and age. So, yeah, there is that tension between the two of them.
Tension.
Ha! Ha!
Tension. That was the word.
Got it. Boom. So, yeah, there is that tension between being an entertainer and being an artist. I guess that's where the real tension comes from, is when you are an entertainer, but it's really also you wanting to be who you are and express yourself and find fulfillment in that. And that's where being an artist comes into play. And sometimes being an artist and being an entertainer are completely at odds with one another.
Yeah.
Like, I almost think of
maybe not being an artist and being an entertainer, but being your best artist.
yes.
Because the art you create may not be appreciated by the largest audience.
Right. Yep. I mean, you can think of all kinds of artists from the past, like Van Gogh, for instance, or Van Gogh. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's weird. Whatever. That guy.
Wait, there's actually
there is.
There's controversy over how to pronounce Van Gogh.
There is, because, I mean, at least I'm assuming it. I have seen, nerd moment.
All right.
There was an episode of Doctor Who that had Van Gogh, but they pronounced it like Van Gogh. Goth. It was weird. It was the weirdest thing I've ever heard, and I always just assumed it was Van Gogh because that makes sense. So I don't know. I'm just gonna run on the idea that it's Van Gogh, and we'll just, with an asterisk, the rest of this episode call him Van Gogh. But apparently that's actually a thing, unless my memory's totally wrong and I made all of that up, which could also be the case. Whovian fans, if you're listening to this and in your British voice is like, he is a bloody moron, and you want to comment in and tell me that I'm an awful person,
Are
go
all
for
British
it.
people mice? Like, where did that high pitched thing come from?
It's the only way I could do it. Don't make fun of me.
Dumbledore.
Harry Potter. But yeah, Van Gogh. Anyway, back to Van Gogh. He was, from what I understand, unappreciated totally in his day, and he still created because that's what he did and who he was. So I don't know.
It's interesting how there are a lot of people whose work was not appreciated until they were dead. That's the story for a lot of artists. And it's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. We talk about artists being ahead of their time. Is that literally a thing where just you get these ideas, you understand these concepts that the majority of people in your time period don't get? Is that how it works? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
We talk about people being ahead of their time. Can you actually be ahead of your time to the point where people just don't get it?
I think so.
I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Moby Dick. No one liked it until after Melville was dead.
Some people still don't like it.
Some people still don't like it, and those people are wrong. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing. Wow. So
That was a lot.
yeah, I feel like we covered quite a bit of ground there. We're almost up to an hour.
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult to tackle giant metaphysical concepts like art and entertainment, but I mean for one episode that wasn't too bad.
No, I think we did quite well there. I think we did quite well.
And we'll continue it in the next couple episodes.
Yeah, and we will be talking about it for the next couple of episodes. We're working on getting our first guest
Boom, boom, boom,
for our next
boom.
episode.
It's gonna be Gandhi.
Gandhi is dead, Nolan.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure. I watched that biopic and he got shot.
I don't know, man.
I mean, I hope he's not dead.
I was talking to
cool,
Elvis the other day, and I'm pretty sure he said he's still around.
Okay, well, Elvis is pretty good authority.
I agree. I go to him for all of my life advice.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Take my hand.
And yeah, now apparently he has entered the building.
Yep.
So this episode should come out the 17th. July 31st will be episode 4, and we're going to talk about a specific kind of entertainment, hopefully with a guest. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Fingers crossed.
We're going to have to... And now this is where it's going to get really weird, because we're going to try to record as many episodes as we can over the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We may record episodes that might not get released until much later in the year.
Yep.
We talked earlier this week about another guest that we want to have on that we might legitimately not release that episode until like October.
Could
even
happen.
if we recorded it tomorrow. So,
of course, the world could end before
the world
then. Jesus could
end.
return.
The world could end, and
it would be the Unheard Podcast episode.
it would be the Unheard Podcast. I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend to know what post-death looks like for all of eternity, but if there are podcasts, I think we should keep it going.
I think so.
I mean, it's not like we're going to have anything better to do. I mean, like, if we do exist in, like, some kind of heaven for all of eternity, then we really, like, we're going to have plenty of time on our hands.
Dude, I'm all down for that. I say we keep this going.
All right. So there you go. So if, so we've made the official decision that we are going to keep this going post-mortem. So can we call it the post-mortem podcast? Is that what?
Yes.
Or we are adult. Oh, no, we are what? I don't know. We'll come up with something.
Entertainment for eternity.
We are post-mortem adults. or we are dead. How about that? Today on We Are Dead.
Yes, please.
That's I mean, that's one thing that's one title we could roll with, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about, what kind of podcast, what we're going to name the podcast after we die. I don't know. This is a weird podcast.
Oh, man.
This is super weird. If you stuck it out this far,
kudos to
like,
you.
seriously, if you've made it through, like, because we're coming up on the end of this third episode, if you've listened to all three of these and you are actually willing to stick it out,
then you like a very
into eternity.
Then you like a very specific form of entertainment.
You are a niche podcast listener, and you just found your thing. I guess I don't know. Whatever. I hope you like it. Like, legitimately, like, we hope that we are entertaining, but at the same time, like, we started this podcast because, like, hey, we like talking about art and writing and stories and
nerd
ideas
stuff.
and nerd stuff. Like, we should totally talk about it and put it on the internet and see if anybody else will care to listen to it.
And now we're in that awkward spot where we've just started doing this and we have like 10 total views and we don't know if anyone's ever going to listen to this.
Yeah, we don't. And to be honest, like, and this is one of those things, like, we joke about we're in this for the money, but to be fair, there's not a whole lot of money to be had right now making this podcast. If you want to send money.
Yes, preferably 50s and 100s.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We are adults podcast at gmail.com. Like, I don't know if you can. I don't know how you email money. Maybe like we'll set up a PayPal or a Patreon or something.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll come up with something, and we'll start. If you want to throw us money, we'll take it. We're not gonna say no to money.
Nope. But you know what? At the end of the day, if those 10 listeners, whoever you may be, probably 3 of them were Colton as he's testing our YouTube videos.
It's probably accurate.
But if those 10 people are all that ever listened to it, it was entertaining to us to create.
We're having a blast.
It's true.
Like, I enjoy recording.
As we sit in Colton's parents' living room that's like 98 degrees, middle of summer.
We had to turn off the air conditioner because the air conditioner is very loud. And it is sweltering in here. It's like, it's got to be pushing 83, 85 degrees
easily.
in here. It's pretty awful. It's whatever, though. We do this for you.
Yes.
To
Love
be fair,
us. Love us.
We did just kind of say that we do this for us. So we do it for everyone. This is a podcast for everyone.
You're welcome.
All right. So, do we have a cool people do cool things, whatever we're calling that segment?
Oh yeah.
Do we have that?
I
It's your
actually
turn.
do. I do have one.
Wait, you're prepared for this podcast?
I was prepared for this. I saw this on
Look at us being all
adultish.
What do you know?
I saw this on Facebook and it's really cool.
That's where I get all my best stuff.
I mean, hey, it's a good place to go. It was probably the coolest thing I've seen on Facebook in a while. So there's this lady. Her name is Angela Luna, and I don't know if she's the only one who's done this. There might be others, but she's the one that I saw, so I'm mentioning hers, but she made a jacket. She's a clothing designer, and she made a jacket. Hang with me on this one. It's like, it's not quite jacketish. It's not a robe, but it almost has that like outdoor, I'm walking through the desert kind of parka-ish look.
Okay.
It has like the hood and stuff. But
I'm waiting for it to be like made out of duct tape or something.
No. It's way cooler. It actually turns into a tent. You take it off and you turn it into a tent that you can like go inside, and it's meant to be used for saving refugees.
Really?
Yes. It's really cool.
That's really cool.
Uh-huh. So, and I mean, I guess she has other ones too. I think she has like a sleeping bag one that you take it off and it turns into a sleeping bag. So, I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. We'll have to put a link to this website and just send it out that way. But it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Apparently,
we'll put the link in the show notes. We're actually gonna have quite a bit in the show notes this week. It's gonna be kinda nice.
I agree. Yep.
Last week it was like we had the Psychology Today article that you mentioned, and then just like John Boyce. Just like you know what? We didn't talk about what we were gonna put in the show notes. So okay.
So yeah, that was my this person makes cool stuff for the day.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's pretty legit. So yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. So
I mean, I guess that's it.
I suppose that is it. Roll for outro?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know where I put the...
Here, I'll pass you my die when I'm done.
Okay.
It's a 3. And...
I crit failed.
Aha! Me again. Well, it's been great being with you today, folks. Thanks for listening in. Don't forget that the moon today is in a waxing gibbous phase. I am Nolan McCausey.
I rolled a 1.
And that's Colton Wesley, and we are adults. Outro music.